Okay, so let's look at the random range function. What I have here is just an automated character. So we're using that function as much as possible to give them different distances, different rotations, and different move speeds. So you could just pick fixed values, but it'd be very predictable. Especially in like a stealth game or something, you're going to want kind of more random characters. So here you can see he's moving for a certain amount, he stops, picks a different direction, and keeps going. But it's all randomized. So let's just start right at the beginning with the core function. And this is all it's built on, is Random.Range. So here we're picking between two different values, and it's going to return us a number between those values. So there's two different return types. You can do an integer or a float. To get an integer, you're just going to want to pick two whole numbers, and those can be negative as well. For the float, you're going to want to use an f at the end. So this one allows you to pick between two decimals, or you can just use two whole numbers and just add that f. So for this last example here, we're going to get a decimal number, even though the initial numbers are whole. So just an example of how you can do that and put it into a game is, let's say we wanted a random object. So we have three different sword models, and we name them sword 1, 2, and 3. So when we load the actual model itself, what we're going to do is we're going to put that prefix sword, and then we're going to pick a random number between 1 and 3, because those are all the different possibilities. And since it's an integer, we're definitely going to get one of those numbers. It's not going to be 1.5 or anything. So then we're just going to resources load. So we put that prefix on, and we're going to tag the number at the end, which is going to give us one of these three file paths, and it's going to load it. So that's one kind of more direct way of doing it. You can also just create an array of objects, and then pick one of the integers, or the indexes, sorry. So you're randomly going to pick an index from that list. So if you have, let's say, 3 things in the list, you're just going to pick a random index, and it's just going to grab one of those. So I've done that here. If you know the length of your array, you can just say between this number and that number, starting with 0. But usually you're not going to know that. So what you're going to want to do, or it's going to change. So you're going to want to set the first one to 0, then you're just going to want to set the last to the actual length of the array. So it's going to pick any of the values inside that array. But you want to make sure you minus it by 1, because the length is going to return the actual length, and we're starting at 0. So just to understand that, if let's say you had an array of 3 elements, the actual indexes are going to be 0, 1, and 2. But if you run this length function, you might get 3 as an index, which isn't actually in there, just because you're starting at 0. So you want to make sure you always minus it by 1, and that'll give you the full range of your array. And again, you can do that with a list too. So here we're just using dot count instead of dot length, and still minusing by 1. So you're just picking a random index in that list, and you'll get that element. Let's say you wanted to do a weighted chance though. So how I do that is I'll pick between 0 and 100, and then I'll say if that number is less than something, do this, and if it's greater, do that. So by picking the middle point, you're saying what the 2% are going to be. So here I chose 70, so there's going to be 70 numbers below that, and there's going to be 30 numbers above that. So effectively you're creating a 70% chance this is going to happen, and a 30% chance that is going to happen, because that's the odds of this number landing between those two values. Okay, so let's go back to our automated example there, and I'm going to show how that was all done. So this is that kind of automated character. To start, what I've done is I'm running an update function, and I've set this boolean is moving to true, and whenever that's true, he's just going to move forward, and he's going to move by his move speed, whatever that's set to. So I'm going to give them default values at the start, but then we're going to change them dynamically. So we're going to start a coroutine that's going to randomly assign those values. So it's basically just going to keep looping here while is moving is true, and the way I set that up is moving is always going to be true. Or at least it'll be true at the end, so it is able to keep looping through. So the first thing we're going to do is, while he's moving as true, we're going to wait. So basically this is the amount of time that he's going to keep going forward. So it's a random range between 1 and 7. So somewhere in between there he's going to keep moving forward for that amount of time. And then we're going to set is moving is equal to false. So now he's going to stop. This function is no longer going to loop through. So once he stops, we're going to pick a random amount of time to stop. Here I've just used 1 and 7 again, and he's going to basically pause for that amount. So you could build on this, maybe like he turns a flashlight on and plays a look animation or something like that. And then here we're going to set that movement speed, so that's going to be another random number. So his actual movement's going to be different each time. And then we're going to pick a direction. Here we've used just 0 and 360, so it could be any direction. But you could do, like, let's say minus 20 and 20. So it wouldn't do like a full 360. It'd just be kind of a more normalized range. And once we do all that, we're just going to set is moving to true. And this function is going to loop back. So now he's moving again for just a random amount of time. So as you can see, it just starts out very simple, but from that you can just build on and you can make kind of complicated automated characters, and you can load maps a bit differently. So each time your map will look different. Maybe a material on a character will be randomized or something like that. It just has a lot of uses, and it's very, very easy to use.